Hello, everybody. How are you? So this will be my first episode, and it'll be a little different than what my plan is to have. I will be doing this solo, so I won't have anybody giving me questions or comments about why things happened or trying to understand the whole aspect of why do you think you failed or other issues that came about it. Because that's what I would be doing if somebody else was talking in the interview, right? With that said, I'm going to go ahead and ramble on. This is about the second or third time I've put something together. The first two failed, I thought, right? So there you go for the failing of the podcast or the interview process. But you live and learn, man. That's how you do it. So the first failure I want to put is that I think this is probably one of my bigger ones, or ones I was ready to actually open up about. And I don't think it's that bad as keeping it bottled in. But I don't tell a lot of people on this one. At this time, I was only laid off at one job because the company's finances was not so good. It kept going downhill. And I think the company's not even in business anymore. I was with them for about 11 years. And I didn't think I was ever going to leave. I thought this is where I was going to retire after I got out of college. But this is not where I failed. So 2 jobs later, I got this job that I was with for almost 5 years. Because of the incident that happened, me getting laid off at my first job, it took about 3 months, maybe 4, to really find a job. There wasn't a lot of jobs out there at the time. I worked in IT and still work in IT as a programmer. But as any job that you have, at least in IT, you kind of get set in a certain technology and you kind of lose the new stuff. You don't really get to push yourself as hard as you would with new technology if you're in school or learning something on your own, usually, at least in my case. So you kind of get drawn back a little bit. And that was one of the reasons why it took me so long when I first got laid off, because I was with that company 11, 12 years. So the second time, so this other job I was with for 5 years, almost 5 years, they got bought out by a Houston company and said, hey, you guys come to Houston, we'll pay for you and do all this stuff. I was just about to have my second child, and I didn't want to move to Houston. I already had that chance with my first wife, and the humidity was just horrible. So with that said, I knew it was coming down the pipe. I just didn't know when. So I started looking for a new job. My fear was I'm just about to have a new kid. What was I going to do if I couldn't find a new job after I told them I wasn't going to get moved and got laid off? So I started looking and I found another job that was closer to the house, and they offered remote 2 days a week. Unfortunately, they wanted me to remove my piercings after they offered me the position. I'd never remove my piercings because that's not something I'm going to do. That should have been a red flag right there. So I put my notice in and went to this other company, this new company. I only left because of the fear of not finding a job fast enough. What comes to find out is the company that I left, I was there for 5 years. IT never got moved to Houston. They end up staying there. And some of the people stayed there for another year or two, which is something I wish I would have done. Eventually, some people left, or they said, hey, we don't need you. Here's a severance package, and left. And from what I understand, it was a really good severance package. To the point I know one guy didn't work for at least a year. It was an oil company. So it doesn't surprise me because their insurance was pretty fucking good. With the new job I took, it was a lot. I lost money because the insurance was really shitty. And the manager was a complete fucking asshole and a liar. It was just horrible. And that fear of looking for extra jobs, not say extra jobs, looking for a new job after being laid off is the reason why I jumped ship. And I really shouldn't. I should have stayed, especially after having my first child with that company. And the manager I had was great. He was probably one of my best managers I've ever had. And he took really good care of me and took care of his people. But unfortunately, I was scared about not having enough work to find a job. So because of that, I went from job to job to job, and I wasn't stable. And I think that stability or unstability really put extra pressure on the family and how I checked in with my wife at the time and how I handled the kids. I didn't handle them bad. It was different. We had a lot of issues with my second kid. He was in ICU for about 7 to 10 days. Then me starting a new job was very stressful. How are we going to do insurance and things like that? Everything ended up working out, right? Unfortunately, I went from job to job to job to try to find a new home because I'm not a big fan of jumping ship at a lot of companies.
Motion detected at the garage.
So with that said, the failure was jumping too soon. I should have stayed and held my time. It just put more stress on everybody in the family. What I think it cost, again, I think what it cost was the stress of the family and probably one of the issues of getting divorced. Does it still have other issues to it? Yes, because I'm scared, especially with IT and COVID and all that and AI. It's hard to find jobs, to keep jobs there. So you do want that stability. I definitely want stability, especially being a single father. So now I end up a lot more. So I'm not nearly as proactive as looking for something else when something happens. I had a job about 5-6 months ago, and they merged with another company, and they said, hey, we're going to probably do layoffs. We don't know what's going to happen. They did give an extra severance package for them that they laid off, it wasn't bad. But because of that, and then the unstability of what I believed, and I still see it within IT, I didn't jump ship, especially being single and no backup person living with me, and I have to take care of the 2 kids. If something happens to their mom, it was just something I didn't want to do. I'm more about let's do stability. Let's have this tight knit, make sure stuff comes, especially now. Maybe when I was younger, I was a lot more arrogant. It was like, hey, I can do it. I'm God. I know what the hell to do. So now I'm a lot more laid back or reserved about making that quick change, especially with the kids. So that's what I've learned. And that's what I part of me is not so fast at jumping ship or making fast changes. Kind of the quote you hear about a lot is, the devil you know is easier to handle than the devil you don't know. And in my past, jumping from ship to ship, which I don't like, companies are different, and the whole onboarding process is no longer fun. It's no longer, hey, it's going to take you a few weeks, maybe a month or whatever, and good training. It is a lot of hitting the ground running, and most companies don't seem to care. I have a family I got to deal with, and most of them will pick the job versus their family, and I think that's completely fucked up in the first place. How companies do that shit these days. I have a lot of lists that I'm trying to go, questions I'm going through that I would ask somebody else. And some of these I feel like I've already mentioned. So with that said, I'm going to listen to this later in the day and see if I need to re-record this. But I think this was probably a lot better off. Let me read some of the questions. One of the questions I have, how do you feel like you ever recovered from this? I don't think I've ever recovered from that. I think it was a big change, and I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of change in the first place, especially when it's unprepared for, or when I think something bad came from that. Did I learn a lot? Oh, yes, I learned a lot. Life and job stuff, I learned. I would learn this a different way, but that's what it happens, right? The other question I have listed is, how did I try to fix it? I jumped from job to job. Like, I didn't like it enough to the point that each job I was at, I was not happy about, or I was scared. I was having trouble learning some of the new technology because it wasn't me, not what I was interested in. And sometimes in past jobs, I believe, a big fish in a small pond. Then you start getting the real world and you're like, wow, there's way fucking bigger fish out here. And it doesn't seem like back in the day when they go, hey, we'll take you under our wing and help learn you or help teach you. Now it's like, you got to fucking learn it or you're shit and we're going to fire you. And that's really stressful. Right. But there's a company I am working right now that they did say, hey, it's going to be drinking from the fire hose for your learning. And everybody seems to understand it will take a while and you will learn it. It's just a lot of training and playing around with it. As far as what it costs, I think I kind of mentioned some of this was being scared, the instability of my job, what I could focus on my family, the support I don't feel like I fully got from my partner. She was going through her own stuff with her own new jobs and trying to focus that. So it was a lot of change for the whole entire family. We try to handle it, I think, differently in different ways, but it wasn't enough for us to bond together and get past it. So I think that was another thing, is what it costs. I think part of it was part of the relationship. Other tons of other issues with that, but I think that was one of the things. How would I change if I could do it over again? I'd probably stay where I was at. At least be there for a few more years. Maybe not be completely happy with what I was doing, or maybe a little more scared. But I was in a comfort zone that I knew I was doing good. And I was surrounded by people that I believe that cared. Well. All right, so I think that's going to wrap this up for this interview. I will listen to this and hopefully post it. Thank you, guys. And if any of you want to feel like you want to tell your story, if it can help other people or just get it off your chest, reach out to me.